Welcome to the Moviegoers Society podcast, brought to you by Nerdtropolis. I am your host, Sean Tajipour, the mayor of Nerdtropolis, and joining me once again is my co-host, Drew Munhausen, the professional and media movie mastermind, and he seems to be scuba diving underwater. Hopefully you're not on that Titanic submarine that had a tragic ending this year, so hopefully you're just safe and good submarine.
Listen, Sean, my life's work has been to find the lost city of Atlantis.
Just like me, man. I'm not going to lie. I always believed that Atlantis does exist.
I can now say, as you can see, the photo behind me is a picture that I took from my journey of my submarine, and I made it. I made it to Atlantis, met Aquaman, and now I'm back. I'm back home. It was just a nice little weekend trip.
Well, that's super cool that you met Aquaman. I mean, that is every little kid's dream and big kid's dream. But yeah, in this podcast, we dive into the world of cinema, exploring everything from beloved classics to latest blockbusters. And it's episode 24 on Christmas Eve, very fitting. And on this episode, we're going to bid farewell to the DCEU and to Jason Momoa's Aquaman. But before we get into all of that, we want to make sure you can connect with us online. You can find myself and Nerdtropolis on every single social media platform you can think of. Follow me at Sean Taj and Nerdtropolis at Nerdtropolis. And don't forget to visit nerdtropolis.com for your daily dose of movie news, reviews, interviews, and trailers. And Drew, where can they find you when you're not contributing to Nerdtropolis?
You can find me at Drew Munhausen on all the different social media platforms and weekly over at Fresh Out the Podcast, where we talk about TV, games, and all kinds of stuff.
Also, don't forget to catch up on past episodes of the Moviegoers Society and tune into my podcast, Nerdtropolis Mayor Presents, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and the YouTube channel. And I have a lot of interviews I've been dropping. I feel like 3 a week now.
There have been so many, Sean. You've been busy.
So many. The biggest one right now everyone's talking about is my interview with Jeremy Piven, who came into town for Improv Houston performances. I also have the Thanksgiving interview that I'll be that's already been dropped. That's with Nell Verlack and Milo Manheim, and I'm doing one for the NFL. Nick Mistay. It's dropping later today, so stay tuned for that one. That's actually a good one because I get to speak to the voice of Donnie from TMNT himself, Micah Abbey. So that's really exciting. But Drew, we watched a couple movies this weekend. First of all, I will say real quick, because we did an episode on Godzilla Minus One where you got to watch it and I didn't get to. But quickly, I watched it over the weekend. I got a screener for it, actually, which is really nice. And I was actually really blown away by Godzilla Minus One. Very classic Godzilla with modern twists, as in, very looks cool. I love his design. I love the story, and it sets up something really cool. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Go check out that episode where Drew talks about that, because I'm in 100% agreement with him on that. And
are you of the mind best Godzilla movie ever? Like, because that's kind of where I'm at now in hindsight.
Yes, when I was watching this, I said this is probably the best one. I just wish it had a higher production budget. I mean, it could have just gone to the top, as in it was great visually, and they had a very low budget. So I was very impressed with what they pulled off. I wish Hollywood internationally can pull all their money together and work together on pulling something off, because I think Godzilla is, for the Japan audience and the USA audience, right? Because like in this movie, you have like a little bit of America in it too with some of the plot. So I'm like, both these countries need to just put all their money together and make like the ultimate Godzilla movie, and like forget like having the Hollywood version and the Toho version. I think we just need to kind of combine them and just have the ultimate Godzilla movie. And I think this was a great start, and hopefully they can do something collaborative in the future.
Absolutely.
And we also you watched the movie this weekend. I watched something on Netflix that everyone's talking about, is Rebel Moon Part 1, which I watched in theaters. And I'm just going to give you a single sentence about this, and you can do the same thing because you watched Maestro. But my take on Rebel Moon, it is a really fun made-for-TV movie that's split into 3 parts, and we just got part 1. So I'm looking forward to seeing more of that.
Actually, I was looking at this because we were talking about like if there's a director's cut or not. And yeah, it sounds like he made a PG-13 cut, Zack Snyder, to appeal to more mass audiences, but we might get an R-rated cut later. So it's like it is a director's cut, but like a director's cut light. So we're going to get the director's cut dark or R, I guess soon. We'll see.
Yeah, and I put this out on Twitter, and someone pulled it and they quoted it on Fandom Wire, and that I prefer director's cut of almost everything I've seen, even Zack Snyder's stuff, and especially for Netflix. It's a streaming service. Put the longest and best version of your movie. It doesn't really matter. Don't treat it like it's a movie theater. It's at your home. Put the best version possible, because that business model is totally different.
Well, like, and Netflix is kind of notorious for giving creators and artists kind of full control over their projects. It's interesting that Zack Snyder still kind of chooses to do like, well, let me do the more mass appeal version, and then let me do, you know, the I guess the more R-rated, you know, the more adult version. I'm kind of with you. Like, just make the adult version if that's really what you want to make, because I feel like you're convoluting it a little bit by having multiple versions. That being said, I'm still probably going to watch this sooner rather than later. I'm not going to wait around because I do want to see it. It's just, as we're leading up to the holidays, there's been it's been really busy. Like, it's a great time to watch movies, but maybe after we get through Christmas, I'll have a little bit more time. It's just been so busy. But I did have time to fit in Maestro, as you mentioned, which is another Netflix movie and another one with an artist behind it, this time in the form of Bradley Cooper. And if I had to summarize it in a sentence, or just give my thoughts, I guess my thoughts are Bradley Cooper is legit. I'm a big fan of his oh gosh, now it's going to escape me. The Star is Born. There we go. So my brain wasn't working. I'm a big fan of his A Star is Born with Lady Gaga, and I wanted to see Maestro and see what he did here. And it kind of plays out a little bit like a stage play. But I think his directing is great, and the performances in it are incredible from both Bradley Cooper and Carey Mulligan. Like, really, really great. I don't think this is going to be for everyone, but for me, I really enjoyed it for my Netflix subscription. So I recommend it. If you're interested in Bradley Cooper's career and interested in biopics that are maybe told with a little bit more of a flourish, I'd say watch Maestro.
So I guess Netflix is really making our the price of subscription worth it these days. But I feel like lately they've been dumping movies at the same time over the same weekends. They're not really letting these movies breathe on their own. I mean, during the holidays, the last couple of months, they've been dumping a lot of movies, and some aren't even out yet on Netflix. And I just wish they would just sprinkle them in throughout the year, or at least the quality ones, because the quality ones seem to come towards award season, which is odd, or just towards the end of the year. And I'd like to see them sprinkle them in, because there's a lot. Like Naiad, you watched in November, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And there's May, December. It just seems like a very small window of these films drop in on Netflix. And I just wish they kind of sprinkled them in, because I think towards the end of the year, there were some pretty good titles that were being dropped, and a kind of emptiness throughout the year.
Well, and to your point, another movie that I watched that, you know, not to talk about it too much, but I also watched on Netflix, Leave the World Behind, which is the Sam Esmail film with Julia Roberts and Mahershala Ali and Ethan Hawke. And I liked that movie a good amount, and it's still in the top 10 on Netflix. And so it could probably remain in the top 10 for a while. Like, I feel like there's been a little bit of buzz around it, but now you've got Rebel Moon and Maestro, and there's the new Chicken Run movie for kids that's on there. They're all, and the Chicken Run movie's in the top 10, and all these movies are going to come in and start to bump something like Leave the World Behind potentially further down poll. And then once it's out of that top 10, I feel like things on Netflix just kind of get forgotten. So you're right. Like, I wish that these things could have a little bit more room to breathe, but it's also the holidays, so I guess they're trying to pump out as much as they can so people have plenty to watch over the holidays.
And you also had Leo on top of that. So there is a lot that came out within the last probably 4 weeks, which is wild. And we have a bunch. Before we dive into Aquaman, I just want to make sure everyone knows you can go to nerdtropolis.com, and we have so many reviews that wraps up the end of the year. I just dropped my Ferrari movie review, Rebel Moon Part 1, The Color Purple, American Fiction. Drew dropped his Iron Claw. I got Mr. Monk's Last Case if you're a Monk fan. Drew dropped The Zone of Interest. We got the Chicken Run review, Merry Little Batman, and that's just, you know, a recent ones. You can go, and there's so much more. Even Wonka's on there, The Boy and the Heron, and so forth. So definitely go check those out. But Drew, this is, you know, a topic I didn't think we were going to really ever talk about. Is like, this is the end of the DCEU, which started off so exciting and strong, and didn't know. Like, there is a tweet out there that says, you know, name your top 3 DCU films. So I'll start off with saying I love Man of Steel. It kicked everything off. It's like the Iron Man of the DCEU. It really set the tone. I really liked Batman v Superman, the director's cut, talking a director's cut of Zack Snyder's. I think it's really good. There's like 20 extra minutes of footage that really make the movie feel more cohesive. It makes more sense. I loved it. And then I got to go with Zack Snyder's Justice League, that whole controversial Justice League movie that had a theatrical run that wasn't his, and I really loved what they put. That was a Netflix thing, or was that HBO? Who dropped that one? Was it an HBO Max deal?
That was on HBO Max. Yeah, early in the days of HBO Max, I think.
That was how they're trying to get some subscribers. But yeah, I love that, and it's super sad that we got that just one Justice League movie, and it could have been more. What about you, Drew?
If I had to do my top three on the spot, I'm probably going at number 3, Wonder Woman. And at number 2, I'd say The Suicide Squad, the James Gunn semi-sequel. And my number 1, which sets up the conversation here, is Aquaman. I love the first Aquaman movie. I think it's so much fun. And so as we get into the discussion about Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, I think your mileage will vary with it depending on how you feel about the first Aquaman.
And that's very true. So we dive right into it right now. I would say this about the first movie. I mean, the first Aquaman movie was, the casting of Jason Momoa, everyone was like, this is awesome. You're kind of doing a twist on the Aquaman character, which used to be, the blonde blue eyes. Like, this is really cool, kind of do him like this. And brought in $1 billion plus, I believe.
It did.
Massive, really fun movie, but I'm not gonna lie, I think I fell asleep at least 1 or 2 parts. That movie for me, I enjoyed, the scenes of Jason Momoa's Aquaman. I loved it. I love Atlantis and all that stuff. I just feel like for me, it did put me asleep, and I will say I almost fell asleep. I think maybe I did fall asleep for a scene in the second film. So I'll just leave it on there. What'd you think? But for you, tell everyone about your love for the first film.
So I'll say this. First off, I'm a big fan of James Wan as a filmmaker. I really love the Conjuring franchise, and I like the first Aquaman. I thought Malignant back in 2021 was super fun. And like, James Wan's one of those filmmakers where whatever he puts out, whether it's a big superhero blockbuster or a horror movie, I'm going to watch it. And so with the first Aquaman movie, which shout out to Gary and Jahan, who are my co-hosts over at Fresh Out the Podcast, because they make fun of me a lot for the fact that I like Aquaman, because they both are very vocal about how much they dislike it. So the fact that I'm the one that's like supporting it, they like to give me a hard time. And the thing is that I rewatched the first one in the lead up this week, in the lead up to seeing Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. And I feel like I'm doubling down that I still really, really like it. My thing is, Aquaman has always been kind of like the butt of a lot of jokes as far as the Justice League go. Like, he's the guy that can talk to fish, so on and so forth. And I think when Zack Snyder cast Jason Momoa to play Aquaman in Batman v Superman and setting up for the Justice League and everything they were doing, I thought that was pretty inspired casting to have like, very different from the kind of stereotypical look and thoughts of who Aquaman is for this franchise.
I mean, they wanted to make him like the meanest looking superhero out there, which that's what Jason Momoa is, which is awesome.
Yeah. And then James Wan's take on the first standalone movie was kind of like, let's take what is essentially a jokey character, but make this kind of like cheesy and fun, schlocky, almost B-movie-esque, like superhero movie that's just fun. And I like that about it. Like Patrick Wilson saying that he's the ocean master in all seriousness is like kind of hilarious in hindsight. And like, I like Yahya Abdul-Mateen, and he's playing everything as Black Manta, like super, super serious, despite wearing this like giant silly looking helmet that shoots lasers from his eyes. Like, I'm all about it. Dolph Lundgren as a king, underwater king, with like his red hair and beard flowing in the water. Like, I'm just here for all of these things that I think are so fun.
So that was your take for the first movie, and I feel like everything you just said, it would be the same take for the second movie, but I'm like, it's like a rehash of the first movie of what they tried to do and what worked. But then they like overloaded the cheesiness, I felt like, in this one. And for me, I'll say this before we get really detailed, is like, that didn't work for me then. It was just like over the top of what worked for the first movie. And they're just like doubling down on the corniness of it. And it was a little too much.
And this is where we really get into this discussion of the sequel, and I'm pretty much in agreement with you. So like, as much as I like the first one, I feel like I kind of go into the sequel with like a little bit more open mind, because I'm like, yeah, let's take me back to this world. But there is something about this where they up the cheesiness maybe a bit too much at times, but also the stakes don't feel very high. Like there's something about the first movie with the fact that, you know, Aquaman is truly a land dweller, like he's pretty removed from Atlantis, then making his way back, and the claim for the throne and all of that. Like the stakes feel higher, and this one, it just doesn't. And there's not really any ties to the overall DCEU here. This is very much a standalone Aquaman story, which is fine. But now that we're at the end of the DCEU, it does kind of feel like the DCEU ends with a little bit of a whimper, unfortunately. But I still thought that there was fun to be had in this movie, and I'm probably going to be a little bit more positive on it than some critics may be, and that's probably due to my love of the first one. But yeah, I definitely agree that this one is not as good as the first one. It is lesser Aquaman, but it has some okay moments.
Yeah, and this, you know, it's almost like Aquaman 1.5. It felt like to me. The story brings back Black Manta. He wants to, you know, he's on revenge. He wants revenge against Aquaman for killing his father. He finds his black trident. Aquaman is trying to find his brother, played by Patrick Wilson, and you know, it's just, I guess global warming is a real thing, and there's a lot of things happening that Black Manta does because of this black trident. So you have that. I will tell you this: Patrick Wilson, I think, was like the saving grace of this film, on top of Yahya Abdul-Mateen II. I thought his Black Manta, even in the first one, was amazing. I think he's better actually in this one, showing a little bit more range. And I just love the suit. I mean, I just love that suit. It's so cool to see that. But I just felt like the plot struggles to, you know, be consistent. And I guess there's maybe a much bigger plot. Maybe they dumbed it down a little bit because there's no future for the DCU. Maybe there's more to it. You don't really see the effects of this type of global warming thing that you know, that Black Manta is trying to push further. And so, but I thought Patrick Wilson and, you know, Yahya was like amazing in this. And obviously Jason Momoa is Jason Momoa, but I think he could have been drunk on set doing some of these scenes, you know. Some of his scenes just were kind of wacky.
Think he was method acting a little bit.
Maybe. I mean, even Amber Heard said some days he was drunk on set, and that's a whole different thing. I'll get into a little bit of too much Amber Heard maybe, but I really thought Patrick and y'all really like carried this film. They're really great in this.
I agree with you. I feel like the movie is a little bit of a slog at the beginning until Patrick Wilson shows up and they get in that whole scene, and I think it picks up immediately. And the thing with Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, and this just goes into Black Manta in general, is like in the first movie, Black Manta, he has his own beef with Aquaman. Obviously, he's trying to avenge his father, but he's also kind of working for Ocean Master in the first movie because that's who gives him his armor and tools and what he uses to make the Black Manta suit. And in this movie, Black Manta's set up a little bit more as the main villain, but I won't get too much into spoilers, but he's essentially doing someone else's bidding again and kind of gets the shaft at the end. I don't, like I said, I don't want to get too much into that because that's getting into spoilers, but yeah, it's like, I don't know. It's just interesting, the use of Black Manta here, but I do think that Yahya Abdul-Mateen's performance is really good, and I like the look of the suit, and I like the look of the tridents and everything.
The trident's really cool, and the fact there's another trident, but it's just odd to bring Black Manta as the main villain again, pretty much. I don't know why. I love him. Like, if we could have had someone else pop in that really was, you know, just new. But like, those are the top performances, and I have to talk about the performances I really didn't like. And like I said, I thought there was just way too much Amber Heard in this. It was just weird. It was just weird to see her on the screen for this long after everything that happened in the public eye. I'm not picking anything, but I'm just like, it's just odd to still have that fresh in your head and seeing someone on screen, especially when they said they cut a lot of her. I was like, where do they cut anything of her? I thought it was odd because it felt like there was a scene where Aquaman was saying, like, with his dad cheering to being a single father, but I thought he was doing that to himself. I'm like, you're not a single father. You have mirror around. So I thought that was odd. Was that, did I mistake in that scene when they were cheering to that single father life? Because I felt like he was a single father or something, but he had mirror around.
That part didn't stick out to me, but my thing, like the Amber Heard stuff is weird because she's in a lot of the movie, like she's there for the action. She's present, but she barely says anything the whole movie. Like she's there, but she barely speaks. She occasionally shows up for some of the action, or she's around for the action, but like she's just kind of there.
And she's not taking care of the baby either, too. I think that was where that single father thing. I was like, why is she not taking care of the baby? It's always Aquaman going back and forth from the throne to take care of the baby. And it's just like, then what is Mirror doing? Which I think
can I bring up something about the baby here?
Too much baby. That was weird.
This bothered me in the movie. So, you know, I like to pull the dad card a lot on these podcasts. And so I'm going to go into pull the dad card here. There is a scene early in the movie where, as we're saying in the movie, Aquaman, Arthur Curry, and Mera have a baby son. And so that's like a little side plot, especially at the beginning. There's a scene, a couple scenes with the baby, and then there is a jump forward in time in the movie, and it says 5 months later. If you are a parent and you have a child, especially an infant child, 5 months is a huge difference maker in a baby that little. And it almost looked like in the 5 months progression that the baby aged backwards. Like the baby is sitting up and eating in one scene, and like they learn that he has the ability to potentially communicate with fish. And then there's a 5 month jump forward, and the baby almost looks younger or has made no progress. I'm like, this baby would be walking, would be rolling around, would be something. I don't know. It was something that totally stuck out to me during the movie and took me out of the movie. It's a strange tangent to go on, but it legitimately bothered me.
But I like that take. And my issue with the baby stuff was, first of all, there was a long 10-minute montage in the beginning of the movie, which was odd to me. I said, why are we having this 10-minute montage? And it was just strange to kick off a movie like that. And then a lot of baby pee is all I'm going to say. A lot of it, like the first time funny. And then like for 5 minutes and making it the joke. One of the major issues I had, and that has to do with tone. But back to like some of the supporting acts, I'll say too much Amber Heard. Dolph Lundgren in this movie really highlights. I love Dolph. I love him. He can't act. Like, I'm sorry.
He's worse in this one than he is in the first one. Right? Having just watched them both back to back, he's significantly worse in this one,
which is odd. Yeah, and I love Dolph like so much, and I understand he doesn't have a big range or anything like that, but he can. He can sometimes. It does some cool stuff, but in this one, I'm like, what are you doing, man? What is this? And then I was surprised that Randall Park is in this, and he is
in the first one, but he wasn't. I just feel like he wasn't quite.
Was he in the first one? See, so it's been a while. I have not seen the first movie since it was theaters. So he is in the first.
Significantly smaller part in the first one because he wasn't quite as famous as he is now. But he is in it. But obviously they gave him a way bigger role in the.
They gave him a huge role, and I'm not complaining about that because throughout the movie, I really liked his role. Like I really like seeing him in this type of role because he doesn't get stuff like this. I felt like he was more a bigger part of the story, which is cool to see in a superhero film. But I felt like that came out of nowhere. I thought, when we got introduced to him, he was just have a small part and be done with it. But he's in it for a very long time. So very interesting to see him be part of a big franchise for a very long time in the film. Like I was like, okay, you could do some really good stuff. Like maybe another franchise can pick him up and give him a more prominent role because he's pretty good in this. I thought so, and it really added some fun at the same time.
There is a big part of the plot that deals with a resource called orichalcum, which I feel like is a resource that's in a lot of like video games and things. If you're ever doing like crafting in Final Fantasy games or such. Anyways, so the word orichalcum is said a lot in this movie. And Nicole Kidman is back in this one as Atlanta, who's Aquaman's mother. And there's a scene where they're all standing around a table forming their plans. And she says the word orichalcum multiple times in all seriousness. And I laughed out loud seeing Nicole Kidman, who's a legitimate actress and brings a little bit of I guess, a little bit more legitimacy to the Aquaman franchise by her being in it, but her saying orichalcum with a dead serious face made me laugh out loud during the movie.
Yeah, what a strange name. I'll tell you that. I was like, you couldn't find a different name or something better. I don't know. That was
apparently it is a potential real medal. I'm looking at this now that is included in the story of Atlantis and by, you know, by Plato and so on. So apparently orichalcum's a real, potentially real or myth, you know, it's exists in historical writings, whether it's real or not.
Well, it's interesting to know that. But my major issue with this movie, I must say, I think is just more of the slapstick comedy and the dad jokes that go a little too far. The serious moments are really good. There are some jokes like Patrick Wilson, like his humor in this is great. You know, they said Jason Momoa could be Lobo in the DCEU. I mean, if you want to keep Patrick Wilson, I love him. I think he's underrated. Booster Gold, like make Patrick Wilson Booster Gold. Like I think that would be perfect. Actually, I can see him lean into more of the humor side of things. He definitely has the physique. He definitely seemed like he worked out more than
he's ripped in this movie. It's kind of awesome.
Yeah, he looks like a superhero himself in this. Obviously, he's been a superhero before in Watchmen, so that's no secret that he knows the routine and what it takes to do that. But you know, yeah, the humor is really interesting. It's pretty bad to me. But James Wan visually introducing these really cool landscapes and worlds. That's where this film I really like excels. Is that, and I just love seeing the worlds that we didn't get to see before in the first film.
I agree. And I think it's still fun to see, but there is just something where maybe it lost its luster a little bit. I don't know. But yeah, it's just feels, as much as I like the first one, this one felt a little bit more samey, a little bit lower stakes, still kind of fun, some good jokes, sometimes maybe leans a little bit too much into the cheese. But again, as we said, the fact that this is the ending of the DCEU, it just feels odd and it feels a little sad.
Yeah, it's super sad. I got to see this in IMAX 3D, so I thought some of the scenes were pretty cool. The CGI in some areas looked like a video game. There's one like when they're scaling a wall, and you can tell that's totally 100% like digital. Like it was all like a video game. It looked like, but it's super sad to see the end of this. But the way they ended it, like the very end scene where he's speaking to, we'll just say he's speaking to the world or whatever. I thought that was just obviously a big ripoff of something else. But I was like, why would you go that route? Like, what? That's not really a good joke. It just made it really true that the DCU could not be like the MCU at all. Like that was where it's like y'all know the joke of the comic book movies because 10 years this is all you could do, but the 10 years Marvel did some really great stuff even though they're kind of backtracking right now. And so not the high note for the DCU or even Aquaman sequel. But what do you give this rating wise?
I'm gonna be nice. I'm gonna give it, I give the first one like potentially a 4 out of 5 is how high I am on it. So this one I'm leaning towards like a light 3 out of 5. Like I'm almost leaning towards 2.5, but I'll give it a light 3.
So I probably liked it a little bit more than you did. I give it a solid 3. Solid 3 out of 5. Everyone's been enjoying it, to be honest. My family and fiance enjoyed it. They had a blast. I think your typical moviegoers were like it. We're a little bit different in our taste,
and especially if you like the first one, you'll find things to like here.
Everyone's been loving Patrick Wilson, like everybody. So hopefully, we can see him in bigger and better movies. I love everything he's done in the past, but I think he needs some more prominence and more better roles because he's not getting any younger. He's been around a long time, and if he's just getting people to love him so much now, I mean, he can do so much more.
We get the term scream queen a lot for, actresses who appear in a lot of horror movies. And he's kind of a low key scream king, like over in the Conjuring franchise and in the Insidious movies.
Which he directed the last one.
Like Patrick Wilson, low key, one of our greater horror actors of modern cinema.
Booster Gold. I tell you, he needs to be Booster Gold in the DCU. Are you excited for the DCU?
I'm cautiously optimistic. I'll put it that way. I don't know. I just, I'm anytime I start to like, I was kind of a little over James Gunn. I'd say a little bit. He just has a very public persona, and sometimes I'm like, dude, just cool it. Like, go work on your movies. Then Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 came out, and I'm like, oh yeah, James Gunn, one of our great filmmakers. Like, I love that movie, and it was great. And it's like that is purely because of James Gunn. I put The Suicide Squad in my top 3 DCEU movies. So like, I do have faith in James Gunn. So now at this point, I'm cautiously optimistic about his new Superman movie and what he chooses to do with it. So I'll say positive on the future.
I'll say this before we wrap things up is I can't believe how much they've announced for the DCU. Like all the projects, TV and movies. And Marvel was not like that when they started. And it's just like, I understand James Gunn learn from Kevin Feige. You got to have like a 10-year plan, but you don't have to announce the 10-year plan. You could have just maybe announced the Superman stuff and then maybe Peacemaker season 2 or whatever they're doing with that. But there's a lot of stuff now. And I'm like, are they going to really follow through with it? It's like, you see Marvel, they have to like change things up, cancel things, move things around. That's just how the industry works. And just sometimes you never know what's thrown at you. And so I'm hoping James Gunn can handle all of this because I just can't see it all happening, especially on time. And honestly, all I really wanted was more Superman and more Batman. The DC really couldn't do that. They had to add all these other characters, but James Gunn now is bringing everybody in. It feels like already early on. I'm waiting for that Batman movie, and I am wanting Reacher himself to play Bruce Wayne and Batman. And so that's what I want. It's just more Batman. And just like I want my Spider-Mans. That's the only 2 superheroes I really want.
I will say this, James Gunn has done really great with casting in all of his movies. So I have faith in whoever he chooses to be part of that. I assume he will have involvement in a lot of the casting of these bigger characters, regardless of who's directing which films. So, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, and we should. He's delivered some great Guardian films, and that last one was a knockout out of the park. Like, what a way to say goodbye to Marvel, which was awesome. So, looking forward to it. We gotta have a busy year, as this year's is pretty much done. We have a lot for y'all coming up in 2024. A lot more episodes, a lot more interviews, a lot more movie reviews, a lot more everything. So if you haven't yet, check out our previous episodes of the Moviegoers Society. Check out my podcast, Nerdtropolis Mayor Presents, where I interview directors and actors all on the Nerdtropolis Podcast Network. And once again, Drew, where can they find you?
You can find me at Drew Munhausen on all the different social media platforms, over at Letterboxd, at Drew Munhausen, where I'm logging what movies I'm watching and my thoughts and opinions and quippy one-liners that I think are funny, but probably nobody else does. And then, of course, here on the Moviegoers Society podcast.
Thanks again for joining us for another episode of the Moviegoers Society. Once again, I'm Sean Tajipour, the mayor of Nerdtropolis, and we'll see you in 2024.